Let's bring in now SABC News International News Editor Sophie Mokoena. I think let's start on that trajectory, Sophie. This meeting, how important is it to address the ongoing volatility in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo? We've seen reports over the past couple of days that the situation itself really has not gone down.
I think this meeting is quite important, as my colleague Isaac Lukando from Dar es Salaam pointed out, that to have President Tshisekedi, even though he is virtual, and President Paul Kagame in the meeting, it's quite important, because you would recall last year in December, they were supposed to have traveled to Rwanda in Angola, where the president of Angola is charged with responsibility of ensuring that the peace agreement that was agreed upon by all stakeholders in relation to addressing the problem of the DRC was signed, and the implementation thereof is sustained, and that ceasefire does hold. But we know that in December, President Paul Kagame didn't pitch, and citing a reason that when you really want a permanent solution, you have to involve all stakeholders. I think this is in line with what transpired in South Africa some many years ago, where South Africa facilitated the Congolese dialogue. It was a Congolese inclusive dialogue. All the stakeholders were involved from different armed forces. And there was also agreement that all of them must be integrated into the defense force of the DRC. Because if you don't bring all stakeholders on the table, those who are outside are going to continue with the fight or the struggle, particularly when it relates to the armed forces. If you don't integrate them in a force, then they will continue, because they have arms, they've learned the guerrilla warfare, and they will continue to push. And as they get those arms, perhaps your force abandoning their post, the area gets volatile. That is why today the DRC in the eastern part is in this situation. You have to bring everybody on the table, and the fact that they are all there is quite important, including those countries that contributed troops in relation to SADC, but the East Africa community, because when you look at the DRC, is a member of the East Africa community, and its neighboring countries in the East Africa community that are also being fingered in terms of being problematic. Therefore, you can't leave East Africa community and just focus on SADC.
Well, I wish you were there to be a fly on the wall. This is the first time that the Rwandan president, Paul Kagame, and South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa will be in one room, following what we all saw was, that spat that had taken place. I guess on the sidelines, we're likely to hear, if at all the two have met, to address issues relating the use of some of the language that the Rwandan president was unhappy about pertaining to South Africa. He was certainly not holding back in accusing South Africa's president of misinterpreting what their conversation had been about.
You are correct, Griselda, but when you follow what the president said yesterday when he was at the golf course speaking to journalists, he indicated that he is not going to descend in mudslinging. As when they go low, you go up. That's what Michelle Obama often say. And the president, I think, would prefer to have perhaps a bilateral meeting with President Kagame. We don't know whether on the margins of this meeting during lunchtime, we are likely going to see that bilateral. But I think, leaders, they can make statements and harsh statements in public. When they speak their minds, and therefore behind the scenes and iron out the difference. And I'm saying this, Griselda, because you'd recall in April, I was in Kigali, and President Ramaphosa was in Kigali, former President Thabo Mbeki was in Kigali, attending the 30th commemoration of the genocide. President Ramaphosa, on arrival in the evening, met with President Paul Kagame to try and iron out the differences between South Africa and Rwanda, because they are quite intense. Unfortunately, President Ramaphosa inherited that frosty relationship that played itself, particularly starting from the time of President Kgalema Motlanthe, that interim moment, and to President Zuma. He has inherited this frosty relationship. He was trying to undo that, but of course this latest development in the eastern part of the DRC has again caused a strain. But I think he will find a way to engage President Paul Kagame. He is no stranger to negotiations. You know, he was tasked with the responsibility of being involved in the Ireland question by President Nelson Mandela at that time. He was involved in the talks in South Africa with the then regime. And therefore, I think he will have to use that capacity, skills that he acquired in terms of the negotiations. But I think he's also in touch with South Africans who have been in government, who are familiar with the character Paul Kagame, and he would know exactly how to engage him. And of course, it will be interesting, but I can assure you, Griselda, you will get it first from SABC in terms of what was the body language, what are the outcomes, and this matter of Rwanda and South Africa, how is it being resolved? Because I know, I've spoken to many South Africans behind the scenes who have been involved in such processes. There are also efforts by South Africans who have been involved in these processes to ensure that at the end of the day, Africa is at peace, and they will ensure that Rwanda and South Africa do find one another, even though you may still have issues where they will differ.
Yeah. Let's move to something else now. I was telling colleagues as I walked into the office this morning, it's very difficult to sleep in South Africa. Anything can develop overnight. The latest salvo from the US President Donald Trump, inviting Afrikaners to America as refugees over South Africa's, Land Act. What are the repercussions of this? I mean, there's so much commentary at the moment regarding this latest salvo by the US President Donald Trump. But what is also quite striking is there doesn't seem to be a conversation from America to South Africa to try and understand what this land law is about. It seems as if communication, which is disinformation, is being peddled across certain parts of the world, and there doesn't seem to be an extension from America to try and establish what this is really about.
Those who lobbied for this are the ones who are going to pay a price. They are the ones who are going to pay a price, because they are the ones, they are the have-nots, the previously disadvantaged. And I would be frank, the Black African majority will feel the pinch, not now, later. But now, the haves are going to have it tough. Remember, it will be big business that is going to suffer. Who is big business in this context of the South African history? Who are the big farmers in this country in terms of exporting your products to America? Who are they? And therefore, sometimes those who have been pushing for this are now panicking, because they are going to be in the receiving end. It was well and good when there was this narrative, and now it's crunch time, and we will see people pulling back. But when they march to Voortrekker with the old South African flag, making those inflammatory statements of fear and fear mongering, now Trump is responding, thinking this is a reality. Walking back, it's little too late. But of course, even ordinary people will suffer later, particularly on issue of stopping the funding. South African government, I think, after that volatile statement from Trump on executive orders, not only to South Africa, but to the entire world in terms of different countries, Canada, China, South Africa should have applied its mind that this is not, we are not immune. We are likely going to be affected based on our stance on Israel, our transformation in the country. So we must prepare ourselves. And we had the president yesterday saying he is going to send his envoy to America and other countries around the world to explain South Africa's foreign policy, but the theme of the G20 also. And therefore, that's what I expect. We will speak to the presidency to try and get information. Who are these envoys? But the ambassador in Washington, Ibrahim Rasool, has his work cut out. And indeed, we are not having a moment to sleep, Griselda, because you can't sleep before the Americans go to bed, or I can say before Donald Trump arrival.
That's right. So, in that executive order, he also mentioned South Africa's actions against Israel at the International Court of Justice. I mean, what are the implications of that for South Africa and other countries that were against this conflict?
Well, I don't think something that we've been missing, a major story developed last week at the Hague, where many countries had an event to support South Africa's case at the ICJ and also at the International Criminal Court, because they are both in the Hague in the Netherlands. I can't see those countries walking back. And therefore, South Africa will continue to have support from those countries who are saying Palestinian question must be resolved and Palestinians must be supported in terms of ensuring that you have this two-state solution. And there's accountability. Gaza is in ruins, Griselda. Right now, West Bank is under attack, and you cannot be silent as international community. And South Africa didn't use military or call for military invasion. South Africa is just using the international law to try and find a solution. And this is exactly what the UN is all about when it was established in 1945, to maintain peace, and the Security Council being charged with the responsibility of maintenance of peace. The Security Council is failing because of veto powers. And therefore, what do? You go to the organs of the UN. And the International Court of Justice is a court of UN, it's a world court. That's where you have to settle disputes.
Yeah, just before I come to something that's also developing in South Africa at the moment, which I see has come through with our team of producers. I'll come to that in just a moment, Sophie. But of course, what is the latest regarding the repatriation of the 14 South African soldiers? We will be live to Uganda at 11 o'clock, I understand. You've organized our team to give us a live update from there. Where exactly are we in terms of the repatriation of these 14 soldiers?
The trucks and the buses and the cars, a convoy is en route to Entebbe, the capital. And therefore, on arrival there, the bodies will be handled by the UN still at the UN field hospital or hospital in Entebbe. As you know that in the Great Lakes region, particularly in East Africa, you have many UN agencies operating there, the WHO, your World Food Program, MONUSC, because there's always challenges there and refugees there. So they have lots of facilities. They will be taken there for processing, because it has to be a properly done process. You don't just hand over the bodies to anybody. You must make sure this is the relevant country, and this relevant country will hand over these bodies to the relevant families. So that process will get underway. And then the bodies or the remains and those who, the 7 the military personnel, will then be flown to South Africa. I am sure the South African Defence Force cargo planes, the big ones, you know them, we've seen them doing evacuation and also repatriation of bodies in the Nigeria crisis some years ago, will then take these bodies to Waterkloof. I think from Waterkloof, they'll be taken to One Mill Hospital, which is the military hospital, another processing in the country, home affairs, health, and all of that. And then later, maybe a few days later, then families will be handed over those bodies. And I think only during that time, media will be invited during the handover. We've seen these processes many times. But it's a very, very meticulous process. You can't just take chances.
Absolutely.
But at least families must know that their loved ones, the remains of their loved ones, will be arriving in a country soon, and they will find closure.
And they've been waiting in anticipation. I want to, just before I let you go, bring you back on what's just come through now. We understand that AfriForum and Solidarity will be holding a media briefing this afternoon regarding that executive order by US President Donald Trump. This on the position of Afrikaners in South Africa, as well as funding to South Africa. The expectation was that AfriForum would need to say something on this. Over the accusation, yeah.
I will be there. We will cover that press conference live. We are going to ask hard questions. I saw one of our former colleague, Shingai Nyoka, communicating on social media with Shawen, saying the way she sees things, she's in Zimbabwe, it won't be senior citizens, Afrikaners, taking the offer from Trump, but younger Afrikaners. And when they arrive there, most of them are not going to be involved in farming. They will just do other stuff, capacitating themselves, going to school. So we want to hear from AfriForum and those who will be there, or organizations. What are you going to do about this now? Because it's going to affect the economy. You are the ones, the haves. How is it going to impact on you? And walking back, it's too little, too late.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, Sophie Mokoena. We do appreciate your time here and all the insights on all these stories that are developing hour by hour. As I say, AfriForum, of course, holding that media briefing at 1 o'clock this afternoon. We'll have you covered on that. At 11 o'clock, just shortly after that, we'll also be live to Uganda on the latest on the repatriation of those South African soldiers. As Sophie indicated, that repatriation process is underway at the moment. Thank you very much indeed for your time.